The massive hall of the Galactic Institute of Strategic Learning stretched out before Hayes like a cathedral built for giants. Crystalline walls caught light from 3 different suns and scattered it across the floor in rainbow patterns. She sat in the back row, her human eyes taking in everything while her hands stayed empty. No tablet, no recorder, no notes. Around her, creatures from 40 different species scribbled frantically on every surface available. They used their forearms to write twice as fast as anyone else. They extended their long fingers across floating screens. Even whose eyes could see in 8 different light spectrums, recorded everything with devices that hummed softly through the chamber. Just watched. The stage at the front of the hall opened and Castellan Vex entered. The room went silent immediately. Students straightened. Some stood. Vex was legend among military strategists across the galaxy. His tactics had won wars. His predictions had prevented conflicts. His theories were taught everywhere from the smallest outpost to the greatest centers of learning. He was tall with skin that shifted between deep blue and purple as he moved. His eyes were large and intelligent, and they swept across the room with the confidence of someone who had never been wrong about anything important. "Good morning, students," Vex said. His voice was smooth but carried a sharp edge beneath it. "You are here because your civilizations believe you have potential. Today, we begin to determine if that belief is justified." He gestured, and the wall behind him filled with images. Battle sites, tactical maps, fleet formations from conflicts that had shaped galactic history. "Strategic warfare is not random," Vex continued. "It is mathematics, it is physics, it is the application of superior force at critical moments. Today I will teach you the fundamental principle of predictive combat analysis. If you understand this principle, you can predict 95% of all military outcomes across known space." Still did not write. Vex noticed. His eyes found hers across the crowded hall and his expression changed. Something flickered there, curiosity mixed with irritation. For the next hour, Vex lectured. He explained the principle of force multiplication. He described how species with superior technology always defeated those without it. He presented his own battles, analyzing each one to prove his theory. He showed moments where he had predicted enemy movements with absolute accuracy. He explained why organic-based civilizations could never match the precision of machine-assisted intelligence. When he finished, the entire room erupted in questions and note-taking. Students compared their recordings. They discussed theories. The energy was thick with excitement and fear. Everyone wanted to understand what they had just heard. Vex ignored all of them and walked directly to "You," he said. It was not a question or a greeting. It was a statement of fact. "Why are you not taking notes?" Stood slowly. She was shorter than Vex, like all humans were compared to most alien species. Her brown eyes looked up at his larger ones without fear or hesitation. "Because I already know your lecture by heart," she said simply. The entire hall went quiet again. Vex's skin darkened to nearly black. The shift was involuntary, a sign of anger among his species. "You know my lecture," Vex repeated. His voice was low and dangerous. "The lecture I have refined over 3 centuries of military service, the principles I have developed through personal command of 17 major conflicts." "Yes," said. Beside her, her human partner and put his head in his hands. They had been at the academy for exactly 4 hours. This was not how he had hoped things would begin. "How is this possible?" Vex demanded. "You are human. Your species has been in space for less than 50 years. Your military experience is almost non-existent. Your recorded history spans barely 2,000 years. "All true," agreed. "Then explain," Vex said, his 4 arms folded across his chest. "How do you know what I have not yet finished teaching?" Took a breath. Around them, dozens of species leaned forward, watching this confrontation with the intensity of a predator watching prey. "During our journey here, I requested access to the Galactic Archives," began. "My civilization provided me with credentials and resources. I studied your published works, all 23 of them. I reviewed your accepted theories and your rejected ones. I examined your tactical logs from each of your battles. I even found your personal notes about failures and how you adapted from them." She paused, letting that sink in. "The principle you taught today," continued. "You first developed it 200 years ago. You refined it 130 years ago. You added the force multiplication component 80 years ago. You attempted to apply the machine intelligence model 40 years ago, and it failed in the conflict. Then you revised it. The lecture you gave today is version 7 of your theory, with 84 specific modifications you have made based on lessons learned. Vex said nothing. His skin continued to darken. I could recite it back to you word for word, said. Or I could tell you the 3 ways it is going to fail in the next decade. Or I could explain why your assumption about organic intelligence being inferior to machine intelligence is factually incorrect based on the examples you yourself provided. A sound rippled through the hall. It took a moment to recognize it as laughter. Some of the students were actually laughing, not in support, but in shock and disbelief. This human had just challenged the greatest military mind in the known galaxy. Vex stepped closer, too. His presence was enormous. His intellect radiated from him like heat from a star. You are claiming to understand 300 years of my work because you read some files during your journey, Vex said. Not a question. I'm claiming I did understand it, corrected. That's why I don't need to take notes. Senator, the director of the academy, stood from her seat at the front. She was small even for her species, but her presence commanded respect. Her pale skin seemed to glow under the lights. Castellan Vex, she said formally, what do you propose? Vex turned away from, he looked at the senator, then he looked back at. I propose an examination, he said. His voice was cold and precise. More than an examination, a trial. If this human truly understands my work, she will prove it under conditions I design. And when she fails, when her arrogance is exposed for the foolishness it is, then perhaps the rest of this academy will remember that some species were meant to remain observers, not participants. Stepped forward, grabbed her arm, trying to hold her back, but she moved anyway. I accept, she said. Vex's skin flashed brilliant blue for just a moment. Then he turned and walked away, his 4 arms swinging at his sides. The hall erupted into chaos. Students shouted. Questions flew in dozens of languages, pulled close. What did you just do? He whispered. Watched Vex leave the stage. She did not smile. She did not look confident. She simply looked determined. What I came here to do, she said quietly. Make them understand what humanity actually is. The challenge had been made. The hall was electric with anticipation. Everyone understood that something had changed. This was no longer just an academy. It was a not for weapons, but for the future of how the galaxy would see the human race. Vex disappeared through a doorway at the back of the stage. Stood alone in the center of the room, surrounded by creatures from across the galaxy, all wondering if a human could possibly survive what was coming next. The examination chambers were unlike anything had ever seen. They were designed to test every aspect of a strategist's mind. Temperature changed. Lighting shifted. Gravity fluctuated. The walls displayed information in 17 different formats simultaneously. It was overwhelming by design. Vex stood on the other side of the transparent barrier, watching. His assistant, a tall creature called Wren who belonged to a species could not identify, adjusted controls on a massive console. First test, Vex announced. His voice came through a speaker system that made it seem like he was speaking from everywhere at once. The battle of 300 years ago, your task, predict the outcome using only the opening conditions I provide. Data flooded the chamber. Maps appeared. Ship positions, resource levels, weapon capabilities, political alliances, historical grievances between the fighting species. Everything a strategist would need to make a prediction. Studied it carefully. She had indeed read about this battle. She had studied Vex's analysis of it. But she did not rush. She let the information settle in her mind, finding connections, understanding patterns. 3 minutes passed, then 10. I cannot predict the outcome, she said finally. Through the barrier, she saw Vex's expression shift. Satisfaction, maybe, triumph, certainly. Because the outcome was not determined by the conditions you provided, continued. It was determined by something else, a secret communication between the commander and the opposing general. They were lovers from different species. The battle was orchestrated to give political cover for a treaty they had already negotiated. The military loss was intentional. Silence flooded the chamber. How did you know that? Vex's voice was tight. It's not in your published analysis, said, but it was in your personal logs from when you investigated the battle decades later. You discovered the truth, but never published it because it would have undermined your theory about pure strategic logic determining outcomes. You needed to believe that force and intelligence were all that mattered. Vex did not respond for a long moment. Then he gestured to Ren, and the next test began. This continued for 6 hours. Vex presented battle after battle, tactical scenario after tactical scenario, and did not just predict outcomes. She identified the flaws in Vex's own previous analysis. She pointed out moments where his conclusions did not match the data he himself had recorded. She explained where his theories had failed in real situations. Each correct answer seemed to make Vex more frustrated. By the end of the 6th test, Vex stepped away from his station. He walked to the barrier. "You have studied," he said. "That much is clear. But studying historical battles is not the same as creating strategy. Understanding my work is not the same as improving upon it." "No, agreed, but I can do both." "Prove it," Vex said coldly. "Create a strategy for a problem I have never addressed. Create something original." A new scenario appeared. A space station under siege. Limited resources. Multiple enemy forces approaching from different directions. Unclear which enemy was the primary threat. The station housed 5,000 civilians and 200 military personnel. Studied the problem, it was genuinely difficult. This was not something Vex had solved before. This was real. She spent 30 minutes thinking. No packing, no writing, just thinking. Then she explained her strategy. It was not what Vex had expected. It was not expensive. It did not rely on superior firepower or advanced technology. Instead, it used communication and psychology. It created false sensor readings. It turned the different enemy forces against each other. It evacuated the civilians using methods that seemed impossible until you understood the logic behind them. It sacrificed the station but saved the people. It turned what appeared to be a certain loss into a strategic victory. When she finished, there was no sound from Vex's side of the barrier. "This strategy," he said finally, "it relies on deception." "Yes," said, "and on making the enemy believe they are winning when they are actually losing." "Yes." "And on accepting losses that would normally be considered defeat in order to achieve a greater victory." "Yes." Vex's skin flickered between colors, blue to purple to black to blue again. "This is not how advanced species think," he said. "Maybe not," replied, "but it's how humans think. We come from a world that tried to kill us, creatures larger than us, faster than us, stronger than us. We survived not because we were superior, but because we learned to think differently. We learned to use tools. We learned to work together. We learned to see value in every life and understand that sometimes the best victory is one where everyone survives." Watched from the observation room with several other Academy staff members. One of them was Lyra, a reptilian student with scales that changed colors based on her emotions. Right now, they were shifting rapidly between green and gold. "Did you see what she just did?" Lyra asked softly. "She provided an adequate strategy," said another observer, unnamed. "Nothing remarkable." "That is not what she did," Lyra said. Her scales turned deep purple. "She showed Vex something he has spent 300 years refusing to acknowledge, that his way is not the only way, that intelligence does not come in just one shape, that there are entire categories of thinking that his species never developed because they never needed to." In the examination chamber, Vex stepped back. He looked at for a long moment. "You will continue your studies," he said. "You will take tests every day. You will learn every tactical scenario the Academy can present. And you will do this while other students are enjoying the culture of this world, while they are resting, while they are preparing for the easier tests that will come later." It was not a question, it was an order. "I accept," said. "I will break you," Vex said quietly, not with anger, just with certainty. "If not through difficulty, then through exhaustion. Every human fails eventually. And when you do, everyone will understand that your species is not ready for this level of thinking." Met his eyes through the barrier. "Maybe," she said, "but I came here to be ready, and I will not fail." For the next month took test after test. Every day brought new scenarios, new battles, new impossible situations. And every day she surprised Vex, not by being perfect, but by being better than expected. Not by having all the answers, but by asking better questions than any strategist would think to ask. Other students began to notice. They started asking her for study sessions. She explained her methods. She talked about how humans learned differently. She discussed ideas that no advanced species had considered because they had never needed to. Slowly, something shifted in the academy. The human was no longer just a curiosity. She was becoming something else. A threat, the distress signal, arrived during the evening meal. Everyone felt it, not through sound but through the academy's neural network system that connected all students and faculty. A colony was under attack. Unknown hostile force. Military capabilities unclear. The request for help was simple and urgent. Senator called an emergency assembly. She stood on the same stage where Vex had given his first lecture, and the entire academy gathered. Thousands of students, hundreds of faculty members. "This is not a simulation," announced. "The colony of Threshold is experiencing a genuine attack. We have been requested to provide strategic support. This is an opportunity for you to apply what you have learned in real conditions, with real consequences." The weight of that statement settled over the room like gravity increasing. "You will be divided into teams," continued. "Each team will develop a defensive strategy for Threshold. The best strategy will be transmitted to the colony immediately. The others will be used for analysis and education." She paused and saw something shift in her expression. "You may assemble your teams freely," said, "but the humans have requested to work together. Therefore, Hayes and her human colleagues will form one team. The rest of you will organize among yourselves." A wave of uncertainty moved through the room. Humans had no military experience. They had no advanced technology. Why would anyone want to work with them on something this important? But Vex, standing to the side of the stage, said nothing. His skin remained steady purple. He did not object. In a strange way that made things worse, it made people curious. Immediately after the assembly ended, Lyra approached. "I want to join your team," Lyra said simply. Her scales were bright green, showing calm determination. "You are a strong student," said. "You would be more valuable working with your own people." "No," Lyra said. "I want to understand how humans think. That is more valuable to me than winning this exercise." Before could respond, two more humans approached. Cole was military, a strategist from Earth's Defense Forces. Harrison Drake was an engineer, someone who understood how to build and fix things with limited resources. "We are with you," said, no questions asked. Was already there. That left the four of them plus Lyra. "We need a workspace," Lyra said. "Somewhere quiet where we can think." They found an unused laboratory at the academy's edge. It was small, but it had what they needed. Access to information systems, space to move around, privacy. Sat down and immediately began accessing information about Threshold Colony. The details were sparse, but enough to paint a picture. 3,000 civilians, no significant military, powered by renewable resources but nothing cutting-edge. Economy based on agriculture and light manufacturing. Geographic position made it valuable for trade routes, but not for anything else strategically important. "What kind of attack is it?" Harrison asked, reading over her shoulder. "Unknown," said. "That is the problem. If we knew what we were facing, this would be easier." Was already thinking in military terms. How much time does the colony have? According to the message, maybe 4 hours before the first wave of attacks hits the central population area, said, reading from another screen. "Then we cannot send help in time," said bluntly. "Nothing in the academy can reach them in 4 hours. The fastest military ship takes at least a day. So the strategy has to be defensive," said. "Something the colony can do right now with what they have." They worked in silence for a while, each of them thinking. The information on Threshold was limited. They did not know what the attackers wanted. They did not know what weapons the colony had. They did not know how many defenders were available. But they did know one thing. They had to solve this with the information they had. Uncertainty was part of the problem. "What if we stop thinking about this like a military battle?" said suddenly. "What if we think about it like survival?" "It is a military battle," said. "People will die if we treat it otherwise." "Exactly," said. "So we need to make sure as few people die as possible. That is the real objective, not winning, surviving." She grabbed a tablet and began sketching. Her drawings were rough, but her thinking was becoming clear. "The colony has 3 sectors," she said. "Commercial, residential, and industrial. The message said the attack is coming on the central population area. That is the commercial sector where most people gather." "So we evacuate them," Harrison said. "Where to where?" asked. "There is nowhere on Threshold that is actually safe if a military force wants to attack it." Lyra had been quiet, watching the humans work. Now she spoke. "I do not understand human strategy," she said. "But I understand this. You are not thinking about how to win. You are thinking about how to not lose worse." Nodded. "Exactly." She looked at, "In human military history, some of our greatest victories came when we used terrain, weather, and communication to turn enemy advantages against them. We did not have superior weapons. We had better information and better understanding of where we were fighting." "Threshold is flat," said, looking at geographic data. "No natural defenses, weather is stable, not much to work with." But was seeing something in the patterns of the colony layout. The industrial sector had manufacturing facilities. Those facilities used power generation systems. Those systems could be repurposed. "What if we create false targets?" said slowly. "The colony creates sensor readings that look like military installations. Multiple readings, spread across a large area. We make the attackers think the population is spread out in defended positions, while actually evacuating them to the underground areas," Harrison added, catching her thinking. "The sewage systems, the water treatment facilities, the foundation tunnels, they run throughout the entire colony. And in the meantime," said, "we coordinate with the colony to send false messages, make the attackers think there is a military response coming, make them uncertain about attacking at all." Was nodding now. "It is not elegant, but it could work. It buys time, and if the attackers are uncertain, they will wait. They will try to assess the situation, and every hour of waiting is an hour closer to when actual help can arrive." They worked through the night, refining the strategy. They used what they knew about psychology, about how military forces made decisions, about how fear and uncertainty affected judgment. By morning, they had a complete defensive strategy that used none of the advanced technology that most other teams would propose. It relied instead on understanding human psychology, on creativity, on the willingness to sacrifice appearance for substance. When all the teams presented their strategies, the contrast was stark. The teams proposed energy barriers and orbital defense systems. Expensive, technologically impressive, completely unrealistic for a colony like Threshold. The teams proposed rapid military deployment and aggressive counterattack. Honorable, militarily sound, but taking at least 2 days to implement. The proposed complex information warfare and digital attacks on enemy systems. Sophisticated, but requiring technology Threshold did not have. Then presented the human strategy. The room was silent. Then someone laughed. Then others joined in. This ridiculous simple thing about false targets and evacuations and psychological manipulation. Senator raised her hand for silence. "Explain the logic," she commanded. Lyra stood beside her, showing that she supported this approach. "Every other strategy assumes we are stronger than the attackers," said. "We are not. Threshold is a small colony with limited resources. We cannot win through strength. So instead, we make the attackers believe something that will make them pause. We give them information that contradicts what they expected to find. We create uncertainty, and in that uncertainty, we save lives." Vex was watching from the back of the room. He had not responded to any of the presentations. Now he finally spoke. "You are asking them to use deception," he said, not angry, analytical. "Yes," replied. "To sacrifice their military honor for survival," Vex continued. "No," said, "to choose preservation of life over pride. That is not a loss of honor. That is the highest honor there is." Senator made a decision immediately. "We will implement both approaches," she said. "The advanced technologies from the military teams will be deployed as defensive reinforcement. The psychological strategy will be transmitted to Threshold as their primary defense." Within hours, information was racing across space toward Threshold Colony. The population began evacuating to underground areas. False military installations appeared on their sensor systems. Misleading messages were sent to the attackers. And then, against all odds, it worked. The attackers approached, detected what appeared to be a heavily defended military position, and encountered exactly the kind of uncertainty had predicted. They waited. They attempted communication. They tried to assess the situation. And while they waited, a real military response from the galactic government jumped to hyperspace. 6 hours later, the attackers fled rather than face actual military opposition. Threshold Colony was saved. 300 people were injured in the initial bombardment before the evacuation was complete. But 3,000 lived, because of a human strategy that relied not on superior force, but on superior thinking. The message came back to the Academy with remarkable speed. The colony was safe, 98% survival rate. The lowest casualties among any. The private meeting chamber was small, just 2 chairs and a window overlooking the Academy gardens. Vex waited alone until arrived. She sat across from him. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. "Your species frustrates me," Vex said finally. His voice was quiet, almost tired. "I know," replied. "You come from a world that is young in galactic terms. You have minimal technology compared to advanced civilizations. You should be easy to predict, easy to control, easy to keep in your place." Vex paused. "But you are not." Waited, she understood that Vex needed to say something. This meeting had been called for a reason. 300 years ago, Vex said, my people encountered an ancient prophecy. It came from a long-dead civilization that had studied the future through means we do not fully understand. The prophecy spoke of a lesser species that would become greater, a species that rose from harsh conditions and learned to think in ways that our advanced minds could not comprehend. He stood and walked to the window, his back to. "My entire academic career has been devoted to ensuring that prophecy did not come true," Vex continued. "I developed theories about the supremacy of advanced technology and biological superiority. I trained thousands of students to believe that thinking is a function of computational power and intellectual capacity measured by our standards." "And now," asked. "Now I understand I was defending against a future that was already here," Vex said. "You are that lesser species from the prophecy. Humans, you come from a harsh world. You developed not through biological advantages, but through sheer determination to survive when everything was trying to kill you." Heard something in his voice that surprised her. Not fear, but recognition. Vex turned back to face her. "The colony crisis was arranged," he said. "Not by accident, by design. Senator and the council suspected what I had suspected for decades, that humanity represented something we needed to understand. So they created a test. A real test with real consequences, because they wanted to know if humans were a threat or an asset." "Which did you conclude?" asked. "The council reached a decision before your strategy even succeeded," Vex said. "But after Threshold, there is no debate anymore. You are an asset, a powerful one, and something my species should have recognized centuries ago." He sat back down, facing directly. "I was assigned to this academy for a reason," Vex continued. "The government needed someone to monitor human students, to assess whether your people could be controlled or whether you would eventually become a threat that needed to be contained. I was asked to report on your capabilities, your intelligence, your potential danger level." Said nothing, she simply listened. "I reported that you were dangerous," Vex said. "I said your unconventional thinking represented a fundamental challenge to established power structures. I argued that humanity should be limited, restricted, kept away from strategic influence." He paused. "But I was wrong," Vex said. "I was so focused on whether you could become a threat that I failed to see that you had already chosen not to be. Your species has been in space for only 50 years, and in that time you have voluntarily limited your expansion. You have shared technology instead of hoarding it. You have asked for partnership instead of demanding dominance." "We want to survive," said, "not to conquer." "I know," Vex said. "That is what I did not understand before. We advanced species have always assumed that every developing civilization follows the same path. You gather power, you expand your territory, you eliminate threats, you dominate." "We do that too," said honestly. "We are not perfect, we have conflicts, we make mistakes, we hurt each other sometimes." "But not on a galactic scale," Vex said. "And not with the intention of dominating other species. You sent your representatives here to learn. That is not the action of a species planning conquest." He stood again, and this time when he walked, it was with purpose. "I have decided to change my report," Vex said. "I am recommending that the Galactic Council accelerate human integration into leadership positions. I am recommending that your people be offered seats on the Strategic Defense Council. I am recommending that humanity be treated as an equal partner in galactic affairs, not as a developing species to be monitored." Felt something shift in her chest. This was what she had hoped for, but she had not expected to achieve it so quickly. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you need to understand something," Vex said. "Your species survived on a harsh world by developing the capacity to learn faster than any other species I have encountered. You learn from each other. You preserve knowledge through history and teaching. You combine creativity with pragmatism in ways that we simply do not." He looked directly into her eyes. "The ancient prophecy was not a warning," Vex said. "It was a hope that somewhere in the galaxy a species would rise that thought differently than we did, that would see solutions we could not see, that would understand that intelligence is not just about computation, but about wisdom, cooperation, and the willingness to see value in all life." "What happens now?" asked. "Now you have to convince your people not to repeat our mistakes," Vex said. "That is the real challenge. You have the capacity to become like us, to dominate, to believe that your way is superior. That is the temptation that every ascending species faces." "We will not," said with certainty. "You cannot promise that," Vex replied. "Not for your entire species, not for all time, but you can try. And that attempt, that constant effort to be better than your worst instincts, that is the most valuable thing humanity brings to this galaxy." A message alert sounded. Vex checked it and nodded. "Governor has arrived," he said. "The Earth representative. He is requesting a meeting with the Council and with you." "What will happen in that meeting?" asked. "Everything will change," Vex said simply. "But not the way your people feared, not the way mine feared either. Something new will begin." They walked together from the chamber. As they moved through the academy corridors, students stopped to watch. A master and a human walking together, no longer adversaries. The image itself was a message. In the council chambers, Governor stood with several advisors. He was a tall man with gray at his temples, a veteran of Earth's diplomatic service. His eyes were sharp and intelligent. He looked at and smiled. "You did well," he said simply. "Better than we hoped." "You knew about this," said. "It was not a question." "We suspected," Governor replied. "The Council wanted to know if humanity could integrate successfully into galactic society, so they created conditions to test us. You passed more completely than anyone expected." Senator stood and spoke. "The Galactic Council has voted," she announced. "Humanity is granted full partnership status in the Galactic Defense Alliance. You will be offered representation on all strategic councils. Your knowledge and your ways of thinking will be integrated into our military and diplomatic structures." Vex stepped forward. "And I have submitted my resignation from teaching duties to lead a new initiative," he said. "A research program dedicated to understanding human strategic thinking. We want to learn from you, not to control you or to change you, but to learn." Felt the weight of that moment. Everything they had worked for, everything Earth had hoped for, it was happening. But as she looked at Vex, she saw something in his expression that troubled her slightly. Gratitude, yes, but also something else. Fear. Not fear of humans as a threat, but fear of change. Fear that the galaxy would never be the same. Fear that old certainties about power and superiority and the natural order of things had just been shattered. Understood that fear, change was frightening for everyone. "Thank you," she said to Vex, "for seeing us, for being willing to change your mind about us." "Thank you," Vex replied, "for making me understand that there is more than one way to be intelligent, more than one path to strength. That is a gift I did not expect to receive." The council meeting continued late into the night. Agreements were made. Plans were established. The future of human galactic relations was being shaped in real time. But in a quiet moment, stepped away. She found herself back in the original lecture hall where everything had begun, where she had sat without taking notes and claimed to know Vex's lecture by heart. She had been correct about his theories, but she had not known this would happen. She had not known that one person challenging one assumption could lead to such enormous change. Found her there. "We did it," he said simply. "We began something," corrected. "Whether we succeed or fail now depends on what humans do next, on whether we are wise enough to live up to this opportunity." "You doubt we will be?" asked. "I doubt we will be perfect," said, "but I have faith that we will try, and that trying, that constant effort to be worthy of this moment, that is enough." 6 months had passed since the vote. The Academy was not the same place it had been when arrived. Humans walked the corridors now, not just in her small group but hundreds of them. Scientists, soldiers, teachers, politicians, diplomats, all coming to learn, all coming to share what they had learned. The grand hall filled with anticipation. Every seat was occupied. Standing room was packed. Species from across the galaxy gathered for the official inauguration of the Human Strategic Division. Would be its first director. The position carried weight and responsibility that almost crushed her when she thought about it too much. She stood backstage with Vex. He wore formal robes of his position, deep purple fabric that seemed to absorb light. His forearms were visible, and he was nervous. She could tell by the way his skin flickered between colors. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No," said honestly, "but I will do it anyway." Vex made a sound that might have been laughter or approval. His skin settled on a steady blue color. "That is very human," he said. "To move forward even when you are afraid, we tend to wait until we are certain. That has cost us many opportunities." They walked onto the stage together. The crowd erupted in applause. Not all of it was genuine. Could see the skeptics in the audience. Creatures who still doubted whether humanity deserved this position. But there was respect too, acknowledgement. Stood at the podium. She looked out at the vast assembly of alien and human faces. "6 months ago," she began, "I sat in this hall and claimed to know a lecture by heart. Most of you thought I was arrogant. Some of you thought I was insane. The truth was somewhere between those things. I knew Castellan Vex's work not because I am superior, but because I studied harder. I stayed focused longer. I believed that understanding was possible even when most people would have given up." She paused, letting that sink in. "Today, I stand before you as the director of a new division. A division that will teach human perspectives in strategic thinking to students from every corner of the galaxy. This is not because humans are better strategists than you. We are not. This is because humans think differently. We come from a world that almost killed us, and that survival gave us ways of seeing the universe that advanced species sometimes forget." Around the hall, students leaned forward. Some of them were human, but many were not. Reptilians like Lyra, species had not even learned names for yet. "Strength is not just power," continued. "Strength is also flexibility. It is knowing when to fight and when to retreat. It is understanding that sometimes the best victory is one where everyone survives. These are human lessons, and now they will be taught here not just by humans but by all of us together." She gestured to Vex. He walked to the podium and stood beside her. The symbolism was deliberate, the master and the human student together. "I want to introduce the first course of the new division," said. "It is called Human Perspectives in Galactic Strategy, and it will be co-taught by myself and Castellan Vex." The hall went quiet, Vex teaching alongside a human, the same Vex who had dedicated 3 centuries to proving human inferiority. "Castellan Vex has agreed to this partnership," explained, "because he understands something important. That wisdom comes from many sources, that the strongest position is not the most advanced one, but the most flexible one. That survival sometimes matters more than victory." Vex stepped to the podium. When he spoke, his voice was clear and steady. "I have spent my entire life believing that my way of thinking was superior," he said. "That biological intelligence combined with computational power was the highest form of strategy. I was wrong." The crowd reacted with shock. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. "I was wrong," Vex repeated, "because I confused complexity with wisdom. I confused advanced technology with advanced thinking, and I refused to see that a species could develop intelligence through different means and still achieve excellence." He looked directly at. "Underestimating humans was my greatest failure," Vex said. "Learning from them has been my greatest honor. I ask all of you to do the same. To be willing to learn from those who see the universe differently than you do, because that is how strength is truly built." He stepped back and continued. "The first class begins tomorrow," she said. 20 students from each major species, 20 humans. We will study history, we will explore strategy, we will develop new ways of thinking about old problems, and we will learn from each other." The applause was genuine this time. Even the skeptics seemed to recognize something important happening. The ceremony continued for another hour. Awards were given, formal announcements were made. New human faculty members were introduced, but the moment that mattered most had already happened. The moment when an alien civilization agreed to learn from humans. As the crowd dispersed, New students began arriving at the academy, humans who had been waiting for this opportunity. They came in groups, carrying their belongings, speaking to each other in languages the aliens were just beginning to understand. Lyra found in the corridor. "This is good," Lyra said simply. Her scales were a peaceful green. "What you have done is good." "We will see," said. "This is only the beginning. The real test comes when humans and aliens have to work together on truly difficult problems, when there is no clear right answer, when we have to trust each other." "You will manage that," Lyra said, "because you have already learned the most important lesson. That different does not mean inferior. That unknown does not mean dangerous. That strength comes from cooperation, not from proving yourself superior." Smiled, "Thank you for that." Later that day, stood in the same lecture hall where everything had begun. The stage was being prepared for tomorrow's class. Workers were setting up new equipment, adjusting the lighting, creating a space where human and alien students would learn together. Vex appeared in the doorway. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," admitted. "What if we fail? What if this experiment in cooperation does not work?" "Then you will have tried," Vex said. "That matters more than you understand. For centuries, my people have believed that we had all the answers. We did not try. We pronounced judgment. But you taught us that trying is valuable. That effort means something." He walked down to the stage, joined him there. "Tomorrow I will sit in that back row," Vex said, pointing to where it sat during his first lecture. "And you will stand here and teach, and I will take notes like a student half my age learning something for the first time." "That is not necessary," said. "You do not have to prove anything." "I know," Vex replied, "but I want to, because humility is a strength that advanced civilizations forgot we needed. You reminded us." The sun was setting outside the crystalline walls. Light caught and scattered, filling the hall with rainbow colors. In those colors, saw something she had not expected to see 6 months ago. Hope, not just for humanity, but for the galaxy itself. For the possibility that different species, different ways of thinking, different understandings of strength and wisdom could come together and create something better than any of them alone could build. The next morning, the class began. 20 humans sat in one section, 20 sat in another, 20 occupied a third section, more species spread throughout the hall, 50 student seats in total, representing 10 different civilizations. Stood at the podium, she was not nervous anymore. She was exactly where she needed to be. "This class is called Human Perspectives in Galactic Strategy," she said. "But I want to be clear about something from the start. This is not about human dominance. It is about human difference, about the value of thinking in ways that other species sometimes overlook." She displayed an image on the wall behind her. It was Earth, her world, covered in water and land and weather systems that created constant challenges. "I come from a planet that is trying to kill you every day," said. "Predators, weather, disease, starvation. These were the constant realities of human existence, and because of this we developed ways of thinking that others might not. We learned to see threats as opportunities for learning. We learned to see limitations as puzzles to solve. We learned to survive when everything around us said we should fail." She gestured to her classmates. The aliens were listening intently. "Today I want to hear from all of you," said. "I want to know how your species survived, what challenges shaped your thinking, what wisdom came from your struggles, because strength is not created in isolation. It is created when different perspectives come together and say, 'I did not understand before, but now I see.'" The first hand raised belonged to a young female. "I want to understand," the student said, "why humans value individual sacrifice. In my culture, sacrifice is always collective. Personal loss is something we avoid." Nodded. "That is a good question. On Earth, we survived through both individual courage and collective action. Sometimes one person would stand and protect the group, even if it cost them their life. We value that because it shows commitment to something larger than yourself. But we also understand that you have found different ways to achieve the same commitment. What are they?" The conversation began. Real conversation, real exchange of ideas. For the first time, humans and aliens were not learning about each other. They were learning from each other. In the back row, sitting like any other student, Vex took notes. His hand moved quickly. His eyes focused on with an intensity that suggested he was seeing something he had never seen before. At the end of the class, a young human male raised his hand. "Professor Hayes," he said, I have a question about the opening ceremony yesterday. Why did Castellan Vex agree to teach with you? What changed his mind? Looked at Vex. He looked back at her and nodded slightly. He changed his mind, said carefully, because someone challenged his assumptions. Because someone said, I do not accept that your way is the only way, and instead of crushing that challenge, he listened to it. He studied it, and he understood something important. She paused. The truth is simple, said. There is more than one kind of strength. There is more than one kind of intelligence, and the bravest thing any civilization can do is admit that it does not have all the answers, that it can learn. That is what Castellan Vex did. That is why he is here. When class ended, the students filed out slowly. Many of them lingered, asking questions, continuing conversations. The ideas had sparked something in them. Watch them go. Humans and aliens talking together, questioning together, learning together. Vex approached as she gathered her materials. You have a gift for this, he said, for teaching. So do you, replied. Thank you for taking notes like a regular student. I know that was not easy for you. On the contrary, Vex said, it was necessary. If I teach this material without understanding it first, I will teach it wrong. The students would sense my doubt, so I will be a student tomorrow and the day after until I truly comprehend what you are teaching. Smiled. Why are you smiling? Vex asked. Because, said, that is exactly what humans do. We keep trying, we keep learning, we do not assume we know everything, we stay humble, and apparently we can teach that to advanced species too. They walked out of the lecture hall together. Behind them the stage was empty, but it was not finished being used. Tomorrow would teach again. Vex would sit in the back row, more students would arrive, more conversations would happen. More of the galaxy would learn what it meant to think differently. On the highest level of the academy, in the observation room, Senator watched the students leave. She turned to Governor, who stood beside her. Do you think this will work? She asked. Long-term, I mean, can humans truly integrate with galactic society? Governor smiled. I think, he said, that humanity has already integrated, not by becoming like you, but by making you think differently. That is a kind of integration that goes much deeper than technology or politics. That is cultural integration. That is real. Nodded, then we have done something important here. You have, agreed. And more importantly, you are continuing to do it. This is not the end of anything. It is the beginning. Below them in the lecture hall stood alone for a moment. She looked at the podium. She thought about where she had been 6 months ago, sitting in the back row, refusing to take notes, claiming to know a lecture by heart. Now she was the one standing at the podium, teaching, leading, showing others how to think. She had come to the academy to prove that humans were worthy, but what she had really done was something much greater. She had proven that strength was not about being superior, it was about being willing to learn, and that lesson once learned changed everything. The galaxy would never be the same, and humanity had earned its place in it not through conquest or technological advancement, but through simple human persistence and the willingness to see the world differently. Smiled as she walked out of the lecture hall. Tomorrow there would be class again, more questions, more learning, more humans and aliens discovering together what they could accomplish when they worked as equals. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, humans were not afraid of that uncertainty. They would face it together with all the other species of the galaxy. And together, they would make something worth making. The story had reached its new beginning. She looked around the lecture hall. Everything was the same stage, the same seats, the same crystal walls catching light from 3 different suns. But everything was different now. Humanity had arrived. Attack in recorded history. Vex received the message personally. He read it carefully. Then he looked toward who was standing with her team in the academy's main hall. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Vex nodded, not acceptance, not even respect, but acknowledgement. Something had changed, and everyone in the academy felt it. Or maybe a possibility. Even Vex seemed uncertain which.